All right, so this time around, we're going to be looking at, going to start taking a look at the Encodian connectors that are available for Power Automate. There are a number of built-in connectors that work for working with working with Office documents and PDF documents within Power Automate Cloud. They're okay. They do a little bit, but there's a lot of limitations in what they have the capability of doing. There are third-party applications such as Encodian, which offer alternatives, give you a lot more features for working with them. So for Encodian, we're going to start looking at what they have to offer here, and it's called Flower or Flower. And basically, what it is a set of connectors that are available for your Power Platform, Logic apps, that kind of stuff that let you work with these Office documents. They list over 200 Power Automate actions. Um, And you can go through the marketing stuff here and take a look at what they have to offer. But as you can see, they have a number of areas of functionality. And you can work with barcodes. You can do conversions between different file types. And look at Excel. They have some general stuff here. So, for instance, the Excel is the stuff I'm going to look at this time around. You can manipulate various things on an Excel spreadsheet. Definitely a lot more than you can do with anything else in Power Automate, or as far as the built-in Power Automate for Excel. Um, even things like locking and unlocking spreadsheets, updating rows that aren't part of a table. And that's the biggest limitation with the built-in connector for Excel for Office one is that you can only work with data that's in a table. That's it. In a defined table, you can't work with other things. You can't move stuff around between different worksheets and all that kind of stuff. With the Encodian, you can do all that kind of stuff. You can merge rows, you can merge files, add watermarks, you can do all kinds of things. Um, they also have so they have like general things, so you can do some processing stuff. These AI functions, I haven't played around with any of them, but they tend to look like they will require a lot more of your monthly credits. Um, and that's the thing is Encoding. It's a paid subscription. We'll look at the cost here. But you can work with zip files. You can do some file manipulation here. You can work with image files, PDFs, PowerPoint. They have a number of utilities that you can play around with. These are much cheaper, I guess, as far as your monthly cost and what's around here. It's just a lot of stuff of working and manipulating data. And I'll do another video on some of the stuff later on. And then, of course, working with Word documents. I'll do another video about Word. Well, but for today, we're going to look at the Excel stuff. So let me pop over here. So when you let's keep going down through here. So I want to look at the pricing. So um, here is pricing that's available to you. Here's your monthly credits. Essentially, a credit for most of the actions. Each action costs you 1 credit. You have to be very precise, very careful in what you plan out and do within your Power Automate flows. And even just testing, doing your development of your flow and setting up your flow, that costs you credits. And you can get 50 free credits per month. You can burn through that really fast, just doing development of a flow, testing your flow out. So, beyond that, they have the paid subscription stuff. And you can see the various pricing tiers here. And lowest tier, you get 500 credits per month for your Power Automate actions. The AI actions, those generally cost more than a credit for each AI action. So, be very selective on what you do with that. And then the utility stuff that I listed earlier, those for each tier, those cost you 1 credit per utility action. For any of the paid tiers, they cost 0.05 credits per utility action. So those work pretty good. And of course, you can look through the rest of the marketing stuff here on the webpage, but that's just a quick overview of that. When you have a subscription, you'll get an account like this, and various status of your account under the flower here. You can get information about the account. To connect to your account requires an API key, and you'll see that under key management. You can create multiple keys if you want to keep things separated. You can also get usage reports, so you can see what your monthly usage is of various things. The verter, trigger, indexer, those are different subscriptions that are different tools. They're not for Power Automate; they're for other things. So, for instance, if we go back over here, um, so whoops, yeah. So, indexer is SharePoint OCR stuff. Trigger is for working with multiple SharePoint sites. Filer is just working with FileMan. So there's various things that you have available. All right, so let's go here and jump over to our flow. So this is a flow that I've created, but a simple one to demonstrate a lot of the functionality or some of the functionality that's available to you in Encodian. I have this simple Excel spreadsheet here. It's just like an approval workflow spreadsheet results here. So I've got the approver, the amount that was approved, the project ID, and a description. So 4 columns, very simple, not a whole lot to it. And then over here, so basically what I'm going to do here is, so we'll get the contents of the file. So one of the things when you're working with the Encodian connectors, you have to pass the contents of the file to the connector. So the first thing you have to do is I'm using my OneDrive connector to get the file content. The next thing I'm going to do is just do a pull out of the data in that. As far as working with the data in the spreadsheet, Encodian basically converts it back and forth between JSON format. So you see here, so if I jump here to the add rows one, I'll get the file content, which is the output from here. I'm going to add a row to it. And you can see that the data that I'm adding to that is just JSON data. So when you get the data out, so for instance, this get file content, the output from that is in JSON format. Or sorry, the extract rows here. It will be in JSON format. So you can see some parameters here. All the parameters. So, for instance, the extract rows here. So you can specify what worksheet you want to get at, whether or not it has a header row, whether or not you want the first row to be exported. In this case, I'm not because there's a header row. Or you can set the first row that's going to be exported. So if you want to get just a specific block of information out of your spreadsheet, maybe it starts at row 10 and columns 6 through 12 or whatever it might be. You can set the first and last row, first and last column. You can tell it to exclude empty rows and whether or not to get empty cells, whether to export values, all of the values as text. This would convert numbers and dates into text fields, that kind of thing. Whether or not you want to manipulate with hyperlinks, do you want the URL, do you want the title, or it as an object. So I don't remember the difference on that because excluding hidden rows, excluding hidden columns. So if you have rows filtered out that are hidden, that whether or not to do that, whether or not to include those. And then the culture name, if you have a specific culture, it's usually pretty good, it seems, at identifying the culture that's in the spreadsheet file itself. But if you need to set that explicitly, you can. That's the extract rows. There's add rows here. I just showed you that. So you can specify where you want it to do. If you don't specify, it'll try to figure it out on its own. And it does a good job with that. So it looks at the JSON data, says, okay, I've got column approver, column amount, column project ID, and column description, and it'll match those up to the headers, and then it'll find the first empty row and start adding right at the bottom there. So it does a pretty good job with that if you don't specify specifically where you want to add it to. If there's a name, or if there's a table that you're working with here, you can specify the table name, worksheet name, convert numeric and dates. So do you want to convert those to specific formats and give the format for date and time, or date and numerics, and whether or not to ignore null values and titles. Then again, specify the culture if you need to. Add watermark. Put a watermark on your spreadsheet, set the font, size, the position, and I'll demonstrate that. So that's some of the things that I've added to this particular just demo here. Let me look at some of the other options here that are available to you. So if you do add an action and I just type in Encodian, then you can see the various Encodian connectors that are available to you here. You can see all of them get listed. We're just going to look at the Excel one, but just kind of go through some of the stuff that I didn't include in this particular demonstration. So if you want to add, header stuff, image header or text header, if you want to specify rows to be deleted, extract rows I'm doing here. Merging files, so you can merge multiple spreadsheets together, and it'll basically just append the worksheets from one into the other. Populate, so if you want to generate a worksheet or a spreadsheet from scratch, you would use populate here, and the JSON data, and it would automatically put that into a worksheet on a new spreadsheet. Watermark, I've added a watermark. Remove a watermark and secure and unlock your file or protect it. CSV parse. So if you've got CSV data and you just want to parse through it as opposed to Excel format, add rows, watermark. Adding and deleting worksheets, separate worksheets. So you want to, if you've got like a spreadsheet with multiple worksheets and you want to split those out into their own files, you can do that. You can update existing rows, all this kind of. So there's a lot of functionality here that you get with encoding that you don't get with the Excel for Excel Online factor. But again, it's a subscription base. It costs each of these actions that you add will cost a credit. So for instance, this particular flow that I've got here will cost me 3 credits to run. So go ahead and because I'm not sure if I made any changes to it. Then we'll run a test. That's running. So again, here's my spreadsheet. It's got 2 rows of data, mark or anything like that. Over here, and that's completed. We'll go back over here and refresh. And one of the things in my flow, so one of the big problems with working with files in OneDrive is a lot of times it will lock files for a few minutes. So if I've got this particular flow here where I'm getting the file content and then trying to save it back to that file, half the time, maybe more often, you'll get an error on the create file, or I had an update file in here. Half the time you'll get an error because it's trying to write back to a file that OneDrive currently has. Utterly annoying. So more often than not, when you're working with files in OneDrive and you're trying to data back to a file, it's better to just save it as a new file. Maybe come back later and clean up, do something like that. It's irritating, and I wish I could figure out a way to make it do it in a happy path. But it just doesn't ever seem to work. I've looked at a number of blog posts and things that people put out about how to deal with that kind of thing. I've never had any success. So anyway, so I've generated it as POC2. So I'll go ahead and open that up here. You can see it's added this 4th row here with that data from the JSON blob, and I threw in a watermark here and it saved it as a new file. And then of course, looking back at here, the extract rows, sorry. If you look at the output that comes from that, here that is the data. And of course it's cutting it off here as well. If I were to scroll out here, you can see it's all JSON formatted on this, extracting the data from that. So it's easy to get the data out and in of spreadsheets and back and forth, and being able to, if you wanted to export that into a text file or a CSV file, having it as JSON format makes it much easier to work with. Also, if you need to manipulate that data in Flow, having it in JSON format makes it. So that's a quick introduction to Encodian's Excel um, uh, connector. So, one of the things you have to be very careful of is that it's a subscription service, and each of these actions cost you a credit. I was on free credits, and I've run this 3 or 4 times a day. That would already have burned through a quarter of my credits for the month just running this a few times. So it's fairly expensive, but obviously, if you need to work with Excel or Word documents on that scale, it's could be a worthwhile business investment for your company, just because all the functionality that it gives you above and beyond what is available. The built-in with the built-in connector. I'm not sure if it's Flower or Flower. Um, but 3,500 bucks for 5,000 credits a month. For a larger company, if you need to do a lot of work with Excel spreadsheets, that's obviously not a great cost. It just depends on what it is that you need to do, what your business purpose is, and just make sure that your developers are being wise with how they interact with it and work with it. So that's it. So thank you. Uh, next time next time around, I'll probably take a look at Word, see what that does. Thank you.